I'm Heather Williams, 34 years old, and I've built a successful career as a real estate agent in Chicago. But success couldn't shield me from the family betrayal that would shatter everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Growing up on Maple Street in suburban Chicago, our two-story colonial with blue shutters wasn't luxurious, but it was home. My father, Richard, worked as an accountant, while my mother, Diane, taught third grade. On the surface, we looked like any middle-class American family. Beneath that surface, however, lay a pattern of favoritism that would define my entire childhood. The difference became apparent early. For my 10th birthday, I'd asked for a sleepover party with my friends. "Parties are expensive, honey," my mother explained, scaling it down to just 2 friends. 3 months later, my 5-year-old sister Melissa's birthday featured a rented bounce house, professional face painter, and 20 classmates running through our backyard. "She's just the baby of the family," I told myself then, accepting the explanation that felt reasonable to a 10-year-old, but the pattern continued. When I needed braces at 14, I was told to wait another year because insurance will cover more later. Melissa got hers immediately at 12. For my 16th birthday, I received driving lessons. Melissa's Sweet 16 came with a used but reliable Honda Civic. "Your sister needs more support than you do," became my parents' constant refrain. "You're so independent." Heather, that independence wasn't innate. It was cultivated by necessity, by high school. I understood that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. I started babysitting at 14, added a weekend job at the local grocery store at 16, and worked nearly full-time during college breaks. Meanwhile, Melissa's only responsibility was maintaining decent grades, which she barely achieved. College amplified the disparity. I attended State University on a partial scholarship, working 3 part-time jobs to cover the remainder. My parents contributed what they called what we can afford, about $1,500 per semester. For Melissa, they somehow found enough to cover full tuition at a private liberal arts college. "She wouldn't manage with student loans like you can," my father explained when I questioned the difference. Despite these disparities, I loved my family and accepted this was simply our dynamic. I channeled my energy into building my own success, majoring in business with a focus on real estate. The 2008 economic crisis hit just as I graduated, making entry into the housing market brutal. While many classmates abandoned their career plans, I persisted, taking an administrative position at a small agency while earning my real estate license at night. Those early years tested every ounce of determination. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, drove a car that broke down monthly, and survived on ramen and coffee. My first year as an agent yielded exactly 2 sales, barely covering basic expenses. The breakthrough came in my 3rd year when I connected with a wealthy client looking to downsize from her lakefront mansion. Her satisfaction led to referrals among her social circle, and suddenly I found myself specializing in luxury properties. By 28, I had moved into a comfortable downtown condo and established myself as a rising star in Chicago real estate. During this time, Melissa drifted between various passion projects. After graduating with an art history degree, she worked briefly at a gallery before deciding it wasn't spiritually fulfilling. Hindsight. She cycled through jobs as a barista, personal assistant, and eventually settled on teaching yoga, a few classes weekly at an upscale studio. Her inconsistent income didn't affect her lifestyle, which featured frequent brunches, weekend trips, and a surprisingly extensive wardrobe. The secret was simple. Our parents continued subsidizing her life, covering her phone bill, helping with rent, and providing a safety net that allowed her carefree approach to adulthood. Then came 2018, and everything changed. The call came on a Tuesday evening, my father's voice uncharacteristically shaky. At 58, he'd been included in a company-wide downsizing. After 30 years with the same firm, he was unemployed with a severance package that would last 6 months at best. "We're managing," he insisted during our weekly calls. But I could hear the strain. During the same period, my mother received a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, requiring expensive treatments only partially covered by her school district insurance. 3 months later, during a Sunday visit, I found past due notices scattered on the kitchen counter while my mother showed me her garden. When confronted, my parents reluctantly admitted they'd fallen behind on mortgage payments. Pride had prevented them from sharing the full extent of their troubles. "It's temporary," my father assured me. "Once I find another position, we'll catch up." But accounting positions for professionals nearing retirement proved scarce, and my mother's medical expenses continued mounting. After a sleepless night considering options, I made them an offer I would cover their mortgage payments until they regained financial stability, plus help with medical bills not covered by insurance. The relief on their faces made any hesitation vanish. "This is still your inheritance someday," my mother said tearfully. "The house will always be yours eventually. We'll never forget this. Heather!" What began as a temporary arrangement extended as my father's job search stretched from months into years. He eventually found part-time consulting work providing some income but no benefits. My mother reduced her teaching schedule to accommodate her health limitations. Each month, I transferred $2,500 for the mortgage payment directly to their bank, plus an additional $500 for utilities and groceries. I helped with house maintenance during monthly visits and drove them to medical appointments. Meanwhile, Melissa's life continued unaffected by our parents' struggles. Her visits home became less frequent as she pursued yoga retreats and spiritual workshops. When she appeared for holidays, she brought token gifts but offered no substantial help. If she knew about my financial support, she never acknowledged it. For 5 years, I maintained this arrangement, my contributions totaling over $165,000. I delayed purchasing investment property, reduced retirement contributions, and passed on professional development opportunities to maintain my commitment to them. I believed I was investing in my future inheritance while helping my family through a rough patch. I had no idea I was funding my own betrayal. Everything shifted when Melissa met Brandon Taylor at a charity gala she attended with a wealthy client from her yoga studio. Brandon, son of a prominent family owning several car dealerships across the Midwest, was immediately taken with my sister's free-spirited personality and striking looks. Their whirlwind romance progressed rapidly, documented through Instagram posts showing exclusive restaurants, weekend getaways in his family's private plane, and courtside seats at Bulls games. "He's different from the others," my mother gushed during one visit. "So established and from such a good family." I noticed my parents suddenly finding energy for activities that had previously become too difficult. Shopping trips with Melissa, dinner parties when Brandon visited, even repainting the guest room that had remained untouched for years. Their financial constraints seemed forgotten when it came to participating in my sister's exciting new relationship 6 months after meeting. Brandon proposed with a diamond ring that probably cost more than my annual mortgage contributions. Wedding planning immediately consumed our family's universe. The engagement party at the Taylor family's country club marked my first indication that something was shifting. The sprawling golf course property with its colonial clubhouse normally hosted celebrities and politicians, not middle-class families like ours. Yet my parents navigated the space with surprising comfort, introducing themselves to Brandon's connections with practiced ease. I arrived alone between property showings, feeling distinctly out of place among guests discussing summer homes and European vacations. My tailored black dress, which projected confidence during business meetings, seemed inadequate compared to the designer outfits surrounding me. "Heather, you finally made it," my mother called, waving from a group of women I didn't recognize. Her cheeks were flushed from champagne, eyes bright with excitement. As I approached, I caught the tail end of their conversation. "The wedding gift is going to be absolutely perfect, something they can build their future on." The women nodded approvingly before dispersing as I reached them. "What wedding gift?" I asked. My mother patted my arm dismissively. "Just some ideas we're considering. Nothing definite yet. Have you tried the crab cakes? They're divine. And the subject change, it was obvious, but I didn't press further. Throughout the evening, I noticed hushed conversations between my parents and Brandon's family, meaningful glances and enthusiastic nodding. Whatever they were planning, I wasn't being included. 2 weeks after the engagement party, my father called asking if I could increase my monthly contribution temporarily. "The roof is showing some wear," he explained. "We've got a contractor coming to give an estimate, but we should handle it before winter." I agreed without hesitation, transferring an additional $2,000. However, when I stopped by unexpectedly the following weekend, there was no sign of roofing work. Instead, I found my mother and Melissa surrounded by wedding magazines, fabric swatches, and a half-empty bottle of champagne. "Just getting some initial ideas," my mother explained hastily, gathering the materials. "Nothing extravagant." The caterer's estimate visible on the coffee table suggested otherwise, with a per-plate cost exceeding what most people spend on an entire dinner out. "What about priorities?" I asked gently. "I thought we were focusing on essential repairs." My mother became defensive. "This is Melissa's special day. We've put aside some savings specifically for this." "What savings?" I asked, knowing their financial situation intimately. "You wouldn't understand," my father interjected from his recliner. "Some things are worth stretching for." Over lunch the following week, I confided in my best friend Rachel Martinez. "Am I crazy for feeling uneasy about this?" I asked, pushing salad around my plate. "I mean, it's their money ultimately." Rachel's expression turned serious. "Except it's not just their money, is it? You've been keeping them afloat for years? Have they ever talked about paying you back?" "That wasn't the arrangement," I admitted. I never expected repayment, but I also didn't expect them to suddenly find thousands for a lavish wedding. "Sounds like you might be enabling them," Rachel suggested gently. "Maybe it's time to set some boundaries." As wedding planning intensified, so did the financial inconsistencies. My parents declined dinner invitations, citing budget constraints, yet somehow managed to fund engagement photos at a luxury resort. My mother mentioned cutting back therapy sessions due to cost, while simultaneously describing the custom mother-of-the-bride dress being made. Most concerning, I found myself increasingly excluded from family gatherings, bridal showers, cake tastings, venue tours. I learned about these events afterward through social media or casual mentions. "We didn't want to bother you," or "We know how busy you are with work," became standard explanations. Meanwhile, I continued paying the mortgage, property taxes, and contributing to medical expenses. Each month approached $3,000, money I'd originally planned to invest in a second property. 6 months before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off my mother's birthday gift. No cars were in the driveway, but lights were on inside. I used my key to enter, calling out as I stepped into the foyer. Voices from the dining room fell silent. When I rounded the corner, I found my parents seated with an older gentleman in a suit. Papers spread across the table. "Heather, we weren't expecting you," my mother said quickly, gathering documents into a folder. "Sorry to interrupt. I brought your birthday gift." I placed the wrapped package on the sideboard. "Who's this?" "This is Mr. Patterson," my father said reluctantly. "Our attorney. Just updating some paperwork." The man nodded politely, offering no further explanation. An awkward silence followed until my mother suggested coffee in the kitchen, effectively removing me from the dining room. As we waited for coffee to brew, I noticed her nervous energy rearranging mugs, wiping already clean counters. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "You're not having legal problems, are you?" "Nothing like that," she assured me quickly. "Just getting some affairs in order. At our age, it's important to have everything properly documented." Before I could probe further, my father joined us, his expression unusually buoyant. "Good news. Heather, you won't have to worry about the house anymore soon." My stomach tightened. What does that mean? "Just that we're making some adjustments to simplify things," he replied vaguely. "Nothing for you to concern yourself with now." The conversation shifted to safe topics, neighborhood news, my recent sales, Melissa's wedding plans. But as I drove home that evening, my father's words echoed uncomfortably. Something significant was happening, and I was deliberately being kept in the dark. Melissa's wedding day arrived on a perfect June Saturday. The historic Palmer House Hotel in downtown Chicago had been transformed with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and custom lighting that cost more than my first car. As a bridesmaid, I'd been at the venue since dawn, navigating hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and my sister's frequent emotional outbursts over minor details. "The champagne isn't properly chilled," she complained as I adjusted her veil. "And the florist used cream roses when I specifically requested ivory." I bit my tongue, remembering my mother's morning plea, "Please help make this perfect for your sister. It's the most important day of her life." So I chilled champagne, soothed tensions between bridesmaids, and tracked down the wedding planner to address the catastrophic difference between cream and ivory roses. Through it all, I maintained a practiced smile, even as I calculated the approximate cost of each extravagance surrounding us. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly. Melissa looked genuinely beautiful in her designer gown, and Brandon appeared sincerely in love as they exchanged vows. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing tears with an embroidered handkerchief, my father beaming with pride. At the reception, I sat at the family table, making small talk with Brandon's relatives while nursing a single glass of champagne. I needed clarity for what I sensed was coming. Throughout the cocktail hour, I noticed my parents huddled with Brandon's family, sharing significant looks and whispered conversations. Whatever surprise they had planned would happen soon. After the main course, my father stood and tapped his glass for attention. The room quieted as he began a sentimental speech about watching his youngest daughter grow into the beautiful woman before us. He spoke about family legacy, the importance of strong foundations, and the joy of helping the next generation begin their journey. "Which is why," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "your mother and I are giving you our home as your wedding gift. The house where you grew up, where we've made so many memories, is now yours to fill with new ones." The room erupted in applause. Guests at nearby tables smiled approvingly, whispering about such a meaningful, generous gift. Melissa gasped theatrically, clutching Brandon's arm as tears streamed down her face. My mother wiped her own eyes while accepting congratulations from those around her. I sat motionless, the half-empty champagne flute trembling in my hand. 5 years of mortgage payments, 60 monthly transfers, countless additional contributions for repairs, taxes, insurance, all for a house that had just been given away without a single word of consultation. Memories flashed through my mind, my mother's tearful gratitude when I first offered to help, my father's repeated assurances that the house will be yours someday, weekends spent painting rooms and fixing leaky faucets, maintaining the property I believed would eventually become mine. All while my sister lived her carefree life, showing up only for holidays and occasional Sunday dinners. Through sheer force of will, I maintained composure through dinner. I mechanically participated in toasts, smiled for photographs, and even managed to hug Melissa when she gushed about how totally amazing our parents' gift was. But when the dancing began and attention dispersed, I quietly gathered my things and slipped out a side entrance. Instead of going home, I drove directly to my parents' house, or what I now understood was my sister's house. I parked in the driveway and waited, knowing they would return to change before leaving for their hotel downtown. The familiar structure loomed in the darkness. Every window, shutter, and brick represented years of my sacrifice. They arrived shortly after midnight, still in formal attire, expressions shifting from surprise to weariness when they spotted my car. "Heather, "Why aren't you at the reception?" my mother asked, fumbling with her clutch. "We need to talk," I said simply, following them inside. In the living room, still decorated with pre-wedding photographs and gifts, I finally asked the question burning through me. "How could you give away a house I've been paying for without even discussing it with me?" My father loosened his tie, avoiding my gaze. "It's our house, Heather. We appreciated your help during our rough patch, but ultimately, it's our name on the deed." "Was your name on the checks I wrote every month for 5 years? Was your name on the statements for the new roof last year or the property taxes I covered when you came up short?" "That was your choice," my mother interjected, her tone surprisingly cold. "We never forced you to help us. You said it would be my inheritance. You literally told me I was investing in my future." My father sighed heavily. "Plans change. Melissa and Brandon need a stable home to start their family. They can't afford something comparable in this neighborhood on their own. And I can—" "You're already successful," my mother countered. "You have your condo, your career. Melissa needs this foundation to get started in life." The conversation deteriorated from there. Each justification revealed a deeper betrayal. They had transferred the deed to Melissa and Brandon 2 months earlier, explaining the mysterious meeting with the attorney. They had used my recent contributions to clear the remaining mortgage balance before the transfer approximately $12,000 I had provided specifically for medical bills and home repairs. Most devastating was their complete dismissal of my financial contributions as voluntary gifts rather than investments made under specific pretenses. When I mentioned the total sum over $165,000, my father actually scoffed. "That's an exaggeration. And anyway, that's what family does. We support each other." "Apparently. Only when the family member is Melissa," I replied, gathering my purse. "I won't be supporting anyone in this family anymore." The week following the wedding passed in a haze of work appointments and avoided phone calls. My parents called daily at first, then every few days, leaving voicemails ranging from concerned to annoyed. Melissa texted once, thanking me for being part of her special day with no mention of the house. I responded to none of them, needing space to process my emotions and determine my next steps. Work became my sanctuary. I scheduled showings back-to-back, conducted open houses on weekends, and volunteered for listings no one else wanted. Colleagues commented on my sudden intensity, but I deflected with jokes about saving for a vacation. During one sleepless night, I created a spreadsheet documenting every payment I'd made: mortgage contributions, property tax payments, home repairs, medical bills, even groceries and utilities I'd covered. The total exceeded $165,000 over 5 years. The fallout was immediate and widespread. That evening, Melissa called from a new number. Bypassing my block, her voice trembled with indignation as she accused me of leaving our parents homeless and being jealous of her happiness. "Brandon and I would never treat family this way," she said before hanging up. Extended family members took sides after my parents shared their carefully edited version of events. Aunts and uncles who had never expressed interest in my life suddenly sent messages questioning my character and reminding me of family loyalty. I responded exactly once, sending a group email detailing the 5 years of financial support I had provided and the circumstances of the house transfer. The message ended with a request for privacy and a clear statement that I would not engage in further public discussion. Then I blocked numbers, muted social media accounts, and focused on rebuilding my life without the weight of unjust expectations. 2 months passed with minimal contact. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned my parents had found a 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb 15 miles from their former home. Then came the evening when my parents appeared unannounced at my condo. The doorman called up, and for a moment I considered declining the visit. But delaying the inevitable would only prolong the situation. They arrived bearing peace offerings, my mother's homemade lasagna, and a bottle of wine we'd once shared during a pleasant Christmas dinner. I led them to my dining area, deliberately not offering to take their coats a small signal that this wasn't a social visit. After awkward small talk about summer weather and neighborhood developments, my father cleared his throat. "Heather, we wanted to talk to you in person about our situation. As you know, the house is Melissa and Brandon's now, and they're understandably eager to make it their own. They've asked us to move out by the end of the month." 2 weeks from now, my mother clarified, her expression suggesting this timeline was unreasonable despite being 2 months after they had given away their home. "We've been looking at apartments," my father continued, "but rental prices in good neighborhoods are astronomical. And with your mother's health considerations, we need somewhere comfortable and accessible." I waited, knowing what was coming, but refusing to make it easier by suggesting it myself. "We were thinking," my mother finally said, "about your lake house. It's just sitting empty most of the time, and the location would be perfect for your father's blood pressure. The doctor said a quieter environment would do wonders." The presumption left me momentarily speechless. After weeks of no meaningful contact following a major betrayal, they had arrived expecting access to my second property as though nothing had happened. "The lake house," I repeated slowly. "Just until we figure out something permanent," my father added quickly. 6 months, maybe a year at most. We wouldn't interfere with any rental plans you have for peak season." I thought about the lake house, a modest 3-bedroom cottage on a small Michigan lake I had purchased entirely with my own savings after years of disciplined financial planning. The weekends spent painting walls, replacing fixtures, and furnishing it with carefully selected pieces. The rental income that supplemented my commissions during slower periods. The personal sanctuary it provided when city life became overwhelming. "That won't be possible," I said finally. My mother's expression shifted from expectant to confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean no. You can't stay at my lake house." "But it's just sitting empty most of the time." She persisted as though I hadn't understood her point. "That's not relevant. It's my property, purchased with my money, and I don't want to change how I'm using it." My father leaned forward, brow furrowed. "Heather, you're being unnecessarily dramatic. We're talking about family helping family. After everything we've done for you," the audacity of that statement broke through my composed exterior. "After everything you've done for me, what about everything I've done for you? 5 years of mortgage payments, property taxes, home repairs, all with the understanding that I was investing in my future inheritance. An inheritance you gave to Melissa without a single conversation with me. That's water under the bridge now," my mother said dismissively. "We need to focus on current solutions. The current solution is that you find an apartment you can afford, just like any other adults would do in your situation." I slid a folder across the table containing printouts of rental listings in their budget. "These are all available immediately and would work with your current income. I've also included information about senior housing developments that offer amenities suited to your needs." My mother pushed the folder away without opening it. "We're not seniors. We're your parents who need your help during a transition period. A transition you created by giving away your stable housing situation. I'm setting a boundary. I will not provide housing for you, nor will I resume financial support. Any future relationship depends on your acknowledgement of how your actions impacted me and steps toward making amends." My father's face had reddened during my statement. "So that's it. Turn your back on family because of money. This isn't about money. It's about respect, consideration, and honesty, all of which were missing when you made decisions that directly affected me without any discussion." After they left, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the freedom of standing up for myself without guilt or second-guessing. The initial pain was intense, but each day brought increasing clarity about the unhealthy dynamics I had accepted for years. For perhaps the first time, I was prioritizing my own well-being over others' unreasonable demands. 2 months passed with minimal contact. My own life settled into new patterns. I used my lake house more frequently as a personal retreat. developed deeper friendships that had suffered during years of family obligation, and renewed focus on professional growth. In September, I won a competitive listing for a historic mansion conversion project, multiple luxury condos in a landmark building. The commission would substantially increase my annual income, validating my decision to focus on career advancement rather than continued family support. Without constant family demands, I rediscovered interests I'd abandoned: weekend painting classes, a book club, even dating casually for the first time in years. My therapy sessions shifted from crisis management to long-term personal development. Most importantly, I began recognizing patterns from my family relationships that had affected all my interactions: the tendency to overfunction, difficulty setting boundaries, and the habit of placing others' needs above my own. I met Jake Thompson through a colleague, an architectural photographer whose work complemented my real estate expertise. Our relationship developed with refreshing straightforwardness, clear communication about expectations, mutual respect for professional commitments, and shared appreciation for quiet evenings rather than social whirlwinds. When I explained my complex family situation and the importance of maintaining certain protective measures, Jake listened without judgment or pressure. His own experience with challenging family dynamics created natural empathy, while his healthy relationship with his parents provided a model of what balanced adult family connections could look like. On a crisp October morning, as I reviewed marketing materials for the new listing in my downtown office, my assistant knocked tentatively. "There's a Richard Williams here to see you. No appointment. He says he's your father." My immediate instinct was refusal, but something in her expression gave me pause. "How does he seem?" She hesitated. "Nervous, maybe a little sad. He said he understands if you're busy, but hoped you might have time for lunch." The unexpected nature of the visit intrigued me. My father had always preferred phone calls to face-to-face conversations, especially for difficult topics. "Tell him I can spare 30 minutes. If the conversation warrants more time, we can continue over lunch." My father entered cautiously, looking older than I remembered. His normally impeccable appearance showed subtle signs of decline: slightly rumpled shirt, hair less perfectly combed, new lines around his eyes. He carried a small gift bag that he placed carefully on my desk. "Your mother's homemade brownies," he explained with an awkward smile. "I remembered they were your favorite." I thanked him but didn't open the bag, instead gesturing toward the visitor's chair. "This is unexpected. I've been wanting to talk to you for weeks, but wasn't sure you'd take my call." He settled into the chair, hands fidgeting uncharacteristically. "Things haven't been right since the wedding. Since before that. Really? No, they haven't," I agreed, maintaining a neutral tone. He took a deep breath. "I've come to apologize. Heather, I made terrible mistakes that hurt you deeply, and I need to take responsibility for that." The directness surprised me. My father rarely admitted error, typically preferring to reframe situations to maintain his position. "The house situation was handled incredibly poorly. You deserved consultation, consideration, and appreciation for everything you'd contributed. Instead, we excluded you from decisions and dismissed your feelings afterward." "Why?" The question had burned within me for months. He sighed heavily. "The simple answer is that your mother orchestrated most of it, and I failed to stand up for what was right. The longer answer is more complicated." Over the next hour, my father revealed the background I hadn't been privy to. My mother had always favored Melissa, seeing in her the social success she herself had never achieved. When Brandon entered the picture with his family connections and wealth, she became determined to secure the relationship, believing a suitable wedding gift would impress his family and cement Melissa's position. "I knew it was wrong," my father admitted, "especially after everything you'd done for us. I tried suggesting alternatives, helping with a down payment on a different house, offering financial support that wouldn't involve your inheritance, but your mother was fixated on the symbolic value of giving them our family home. And you went along with it." "I did. That's my failure entirely." His voice cracked slightly. "I've spent my life avoiding conflict with your mother, even when it meant treating you unfairly. That pattern goes back to your childhood, and I never had the courage to break it." The honesty was both validating and painful. All those years of feeling less valued had been based in reality, not my imagination. What's changed now? Why this apology after months of silence? Several things. Living in the apartment has given me perspective on what we gave up and what we took from you. Melissa and Brandon are already having problems, making me question the sacrifice. Most importantly, I've started therapy on my own. It's helping me see patterns I was blind to before. He reached across the desk, not quite touching my hand, but bridging some distance between us. "I don't expect immediate forgiveness. Heather, what we did caused real harm. I just want you to know I recognize that now, and I'm working to be better." The lunch that followed felt like a conversation with a new person rather than the father I'd known all my life. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, my friends, my interest topics that had rarely held his attention previously. He shared updates about his part-time consulting work and new connections in their apartment community. Most notably, he mentioned attending social events without my mother, developing independence that had been absent in their relationship. "What about Mom?" I finally asked as we finished our meals. "Does she share your perspective on what happened?" His expression tightened. "Not entirely. She recognizes we handled things poorly, but still believes the decision itself was correct. She's struggling with the consequences, both the reduced living circumstances and your distance. I can't resume a relationship that doesn't acknowledge the fundamental problem." "I understand. I'm working on her. But ultimately, her journey is separate from mine. I'm here because I need to make things right regardless of her choices." We parted with a tentative plan to meet monthly for lunch, a small step toward rebuilding trust without immediately resuming full family participation. 2 weeks later, my mother reached out not with the heartfelt apology my father had offered, but with a stiff invitation to lunch at her favorite restaurant. I accepted with clear boundaries about what the meeting would and wouldn't include. The lunch proved challenging. My mother arrived impeccably dressed as always, her armor of perfect appearance intact. Her greeting was affectionate but controlled, with none of the vulnerability my father had shown. "Your father says I need to acknowledge the misunderstanding about the house," she began after our orders were placed. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I corrected gently. "It was a betrayal of trust and an erasure of my contributions." She flinched slightly but continued. "Perhaps we didn't handle it as transparently as we should have. For that, I apologize." The words were right, but the sentiment behind them felt hollow. Throughout the meal, she maintained the narrative that giving Melissa the house had been the correct decision, poorly executed rather than fundamentally flawed. She acknowledged my feelings were hurt but stopped short of accepting responsibility for causing that hurt. "Families go through difficult periods," she concluded as we finished dessert. "I hope we can move forward now." It wasn't the reconciliation I had hoped for, but it represented a small step. My mother had made an effort, however limited, to repair the relationship. Meanwhile, signs of trouble in Melissa's perfect life began appearing. The enthusiastic renovation posts gave way to vague statements about challenges and growth opportunities. A mutual acquaintance mentioned hearing arguments during a dinner party at the house. Brandon was photographed at a charity event without Melissa, standing noticeably close to his former girlfriend. The house itself began showing signs of neglect, peeling paint on shutters, overgrown landscaping, and a broken gutter that had clearly been damaged for some time. Over coffee at a neighborhood cafe. My father mentioned that Brandon's family business was facing investigation for tax irregularities, creating financial strain in the marriage. "They've started arguing about money," he explained. Melissa expected Brandon's family to cover the renovation costs, but that support has disappeared with the legal troubles. Now they're facing contractor bills with limited resources. This explained my mother's unexpected call the following week, a voice message with audible tears asking if we could talk again. The subsequent conversation, while still guarded on both sides, contained her first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I convinced myself that helping Melissa secure her future was worth any cost, she admitted. I didn't allow myself to see how unfair that was to you. I'm truly sorry. The words I had longed to hear for months arrived without the complete healing I had imagined. The apology mattered, but trust would require more than words to rebuild. 6 months after the wedding that had shattered our family structure, my mother sent an unexpected email. Rather than the usual brief updates or attempts at reconciliation, this contained a lengthy, thoughtful reflection on our family history. She wrote about recognizing patterns in her own upbringing that she had unconsciously perpetuated, acknowledged the damage her favoritism had caused, and expressed genuine remorse for the house betrayal. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for the family, she wrote, but I was actually protecting my own vision of what our family should be. That vision cost me my relationship with my remarkable elder daughter, a price I now understand was far too high. The email concluded with a request for family therapy, not to erase the past, but to create healthier patterns for the future. After consultation with my individual therapist, I agreed to a trial session, approaching the opportunity with cautious optimism tempered by protective boundaries. The first session proved surprisingly productive, with professional guidance. My father expanded on insights from his individual therapy. My mother listened without defensive interruption for perhaps the first time in our relationship, and I articulated long-suppressed feelings without either minimization or excessive anger. We left with homework, specific communication exercises and reflection questions, and a commitment to continue the process. Progress came incrementally over subsequent months. Some sessions yielded significant breakthroughs. Others devolved into familiar patterns requiring redirection from our therapist. Gradually, however, new understanding emerged. My parents acknowledged the impact of their actions more fully. I recognized complexities in their motivations beyond simple favoritism. Together, we identified healthier ways to interact while respecting established boundaries. By the following Christmas, 18 months after the wedding that had fractured our family, we had established a new normal. Holiday dinner took place at my home rather than my parents' apartment or Melissa's house, creating neutral territory. Gift exchanges remained modest, focusing on thoughtfulness rather than extravagance. Conversations stayed within agreed boundaries, avoiding triggers that might resurrect old conflicts. Melissa and Brandon attended, their relationship visibly strained despite attempts at holiday cheer. The house that had been the center of our family drama was now up for sale, their marriage unable to withstand the financial pressures and underlying resentments. Neither acknowledged the irony directly, but my father's knowing glance across the table communicated volumes about lessons learned too late. Jake had become a steady presence in my life, his respect for my boundaries and understanding of family complexities creating space for authentic intimacy I'd never experienced before. We'd moved in together to my newly purchased Victorian home in Lincoln Park, a 3-bedroom house that represented my commitment to creating my own legacy rather than waiting for an inheritance that might never materialize. The purchase had been funded by my commission on the historic mansion project, which had been even more successful than anticipated. My promotion to senior partner at the firm followed, bringing additional financial security and professional recognition. My lake house had transformed as well. Once viewed primarily as an investment property with occasional personal use, it had become my sanctuary during the family crisis. Weekend trips expanded to week-long retreats during slower business periods. I'd added a dedicated office space that allowed remote work, personalized the decor beyond generic rental appeal, and cultivated relationships with year-round neighbors. Perhaps most significantly, my social connections flourished once freed from constant family obligations. Weekly dinners with Rachel evolved to include a wider circle of friends with similar interests and values. I joined professional organizations I'd previously neglected, building a network of colleagues who appreciated my expertise and supported my career advancement. Regular therapy sessions helped me recognize and address patterns established in childhood, the excessive responsibility I assumed, difficulty expressing needs, and tendency to anticipate others' requirements before my own. Gradually, this awareness led to behavioral changes, setting clear boundaries, communicating expectations directly, and allowing myself to receive support rather than always providing it. My relationship with my parents evolved into a carefully structured arrangement. Monthly lunches with my father became a consistent bright spot, his genuine efforts to understand my perspective creating space for authentic connection. He maintained his individual therapy, developing independence that transformed our interactions from parent-child dynamics to adult relationships. My mother proved more challenging. Initial progress after her tearful apology stalled as she struggled to fully acknowledge the damage caused by decades of favoritism. Our contact remained limited to occasional lunches and brief phone calls, always with clear boundaries about acceptable topics. The distance felt necessary for my well-being. Even as I hoped for eventual deeper reconciliation, Melissa and I established minimal communication. After several months of silence, she sent a text suggesting coffee to clear the air. The resulting conversation revealed little self-awareness about her role in the family dysfunction, but at least acknowledged that I had legitimate grievances about the house situation. We settled into polite distance birthday messages, holiday acknowledgments, but no pretense of close sisterhood. Her marriage to Brandon encountered increasing difficulties as the initial glow faded. His family's legal troubles resulted in significant lifestyle adjustments, creating tension between them. The house became a point of contention rather than joy, too expensive to maintain properly on their reduced income, but impossible to sell without admitting failure. Social media posts grew less frequent and less enthusiastic, occasionally revealing glimpses of the crumbling facade. Epilogue. Looking back on the tumultuous journey from betrayal to tentative healing, I recognize now that the house itself was never the central issue. It simply crystallized patterns established throughout my childhood, the imbalanced family system, unequal expectations, and dismissal of my needs in favor of my sister's wants. The painful experience forced confrontation with dynamics that might otherwise have continued indefinitely, creating opportunity for growth even through tremendous hurt. The greatest lesson emerged gradually. True family relationships cannot be purchased through financial contribution or maintained through obligation alone. Authentic connection requires mutual respect, honest communication, and recognition of each person's inherent value beyond what they provide materially. My willingness to financially support my parents created an illusion of closeness that collapsed when tested by conflicting interests. Equally important was learning that boundaries aren't selfish, but essential for healthy relationships. By clearly defining what I would and wouldn't accept, I created space for genuine healing rather than superficial reconciliation. Perhaps most valuable was the realization that self-advocacy doesn't require abandoning compassion. I could stand firm in my own worth while still extending understanding toward my parents' limitations. Their actions caused real harm, but recognizing the complex factors behind those actions allowed me to move toward forgiveness without diminishing the importance of accountability. Today, as I build my life with intentionality rather than obligation, I understand that family relationships require ongoing maintenance rather than assumed permanence. The bonds we share with relatives deserve nurturing through mutual respect and clear communication, not automatic loyalty regardless of treatment. This understanding influences all my relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and Jake. The journey continues with occasional setbacks alongside significant progress. Some family gatherings still activate old patterns. Some conversations still navigate carefully around sensitive topics. But the foundation has shifted from unquestioned sacrifice to balanced reciprocity, creating space for authentic connection rather than performance of expected roles. As I watch the snow fall outside my Victorian home's bay windows, Jake reading beside me and our cat curled between us, I'm grateful for the painful lesson that taught me the difference between being needed and being valued. The house on Maple Street may be gone, but I've built something far more precious, a life based on my own choices, surrounded by people who see my worth beyond what I can provide them. The inheritance I thought I'd lost was never really mine to begin with. But the strength I discovered in standing up for myself, that's something no one can take away. Sometimes the greatest gift our family can give us is the motivation to create something better for ourselves. In that sense, my parents' betrayal became the foundation for the authentic life I never would have had the courage to build otherwise. And that realization, hard-won through tears and sleepless nights and difficult conversations, is worth more than any house could ever be.